Well, the Goldwing came back. It struck again. But luckily, no fault of my own. He rode this thing all weekend. He said the thing absolutely ran great, phenomenal. He loved it. He was cleaning it or doing something to it, and he somehow knocked the damn bike over. Well, he knocked the bike over, fuel came out of the carburetors, and he stood the bike back up and immediately hit the starter to try to start this thing, and the starter locked up. Well, from what he had explained, I kind of figured out what was going on. So basically what it broke down to is to pull the carburetors out of it. It's a little bit of work on these Goldwings, but it's not too bad. I'll kind of show you a real quick overview of what it is. As you can see here, right in this dead space is where the carburetor's set. You got to pull a tank and got to pull a filter housing and all that out, get all that out of the way, but basically then you get to the carburetors. You also have to pull the intakes off of it, all four of them, because the carburetors will not come out otherwise. You got to pull all four of those off, get those out of the way. You got to unbolt the left side. As you sit on the bike, the left side, as you would think it would be the driver's side, essentially, of the bike. Pull this bracket loose, pull this flange shroud a little bit loose. That way it has a little bit of play in it. You got to loosen both sides of the top fairing here to get to this fairing that sets in here that closes everything off. You got to get that to get to these two screws up here. So you got to loosen this up, pry it up the screwdriver, take the two screws out, and you can remove this whole side. That way everything will come out. It's a little bit of work to get these carburetors out. They don't want to come out easily. You got to really work at it and work them back and forth, because you got to clear this hump in the center. You got to do a lot of work just to get them. You know, a lot of patience to get it out here. But once you get it out so far, then you can pull the throttle cables off, and that's pretty simple. That's pretty straightforward stuff. Your pull and your return, and once you get that off, then you can finish pulling the carburetors out. And I have the carburetor setting on the bench right now. I was going to make a video last night of cleaning them. My phone was so low and I didn't have a charger over here that I couldn't make a video. So they have fuel setting in them, and I'll explain kind of what I did. And I have another set of carburetors that are similar to it, and I'll kind of explain some of the parts of that carburetor that came with it. But yeah, that's kind of how it comes out, you know, like pull the tank, pull all the air blocks out, get everything out of the way, pull all this loose, pull the fairing out, pull the intakes off of it, and be very patient pulling it out, because it's going to take a while. And also, I went ahead and replaced all of this fuel line. That stuff that was on it was from 1981. This fuel line's brand new. I blew the filter out. The filter was all right. I replaced the line going from the filter to the fuel pump, from the fuel pump to the carburetor. It's all brand new, so that's just one less problem you got to worry about, and the filter is blown out. So I'll show you the carburetors, kind of go, tell you what's going on here. There they are. You know, number 1, 2, 3, 4 cylinders, 4 carburetors. They all bolt up in the center to an intake. I didn't have to pull the carburetors apart. There was no need to do that. The bike ran fine before. It was a float problem, a fuel problem. It ran great, so there's no need to do all that. And actually, there was zero money spent in this. Actually, a little bit in carburetor cleaner and labor. But labor's, we're not factoring that in right now, but just carburetor cleaner. So it was real basic. As you see here, this is the fuel bowl itself. This is where the fuel goes down in there and sets in there. There's 4 of those, 1 on each carburetor. And, you know, you can notate the carburetor by the top here, the cap. There's 4 of them. There's 4 bolts. And this is off a different bike, but this is almost similar. Quite similar. This one's nice and clean. That's pretty much it. Screws, and there's a gasket that sets inside here, and your float sets outside there. Well, see how clean that one is? When I pulled those off, they had a green film to where the fuel level set. So what that explained to me is that this bike has been setting for some time a while back. I don't know when, maybe before he bought it, but about 3/4 of the way up that float bowl, there was a green slime all the way down into the bottom, and there was a lot of crap and sediment down the bottom. It's pretty disgusting down there. And what it is it's ethanol fuel. I'm not knocking ethanol fuel by no means. I'm not saying anything like that. But the point is this: on a carbureted bike that you're going to leave setting for a while, I'm talking like 4, 5, 6 months plus. Anything over 4 months, I'm going to go with 4 months. You better run some kind of cleaner or stabilizer through it. You got to do it before you actually shut the bike off and store it for the winter. Put it in your tank, run up and down the road. That way you know, like, burn a 1/4 tank of fuel. That way you know it's inside the carburetors, and then you might be all right. But the thing is this: a lot of the old things were, yeah, they get a little varnish on them. We'll just put more fuel through it, burn it out, and that'll take care of it. I don't think it will on this ethanol fuel. I do not think it will. So when I found that, I went ahead and cleaned everything. And I'll kind of show you on this set of carburetors are almost identical to these. They're quite similar. So they basically, you know, this sits in here like so. So, and this will all be upside down, you know, as it sits on the bike. But when you're gonna clean them, you have to flip them upside down. And the biggest thing is, once you get these carburetors out, pull those screws. They're almost identical to those. Pull those screws out, let all the fuel drain out of them. Let every bit of fuel you can get out of there drain out. And then you can pull that screw all the way out and all that. So this one has 4 screws, that one has 3, same idea. Pull the screws out, and those are very soft screws. So what I found is take a screwdriver that fits that Phillips screw very, very perfectly, and put as much down pressure on it as you can, and use as much pressure down and twist them out, because they're very soft screws. I don't know what they're made out of, what type of steel, but man, they are super soft. But anyway, once you get the screws out, you may have to hit them with a little bit with like the handle of a screwdriver, because they get kind of stuck, but you'll pop them off, and like I said, there'll be a seal around there. Well, basically what you're going to run into is this. There's your main jet. As you can see in there, that is a very fine hole. It's a it's a flat screwdriver. Make sure when you put a flat screwdriver on that, it fits absolutely perfect. And it's the same concept of pulling this out as you did these. Put a lot of pressure down on it and try to twist it out easy. Because if you don't get the right size screwdriver, or you try to not put a lot of pressure on them, just twist them out real easy like, you will knacker that thing. And this is brass. You're putting brass against steel, and brass will give. But once you get that out, pull it out. I use a torch tip cleaner, as you see here, to clean everything out. But be really easy with that, because most torch tip cleaners are steel. Steel will eat up brass pretty easy, so be very gentle with this. But use carburetor cleaner just on that jet. Pull it out, clean it out. On the Goldwing, there's a barrel that sits down here, and it's an 8mm. Put an 8mm on it, counterclockwise, just like everything out, pull it out. And it's about yay long. Well, the jet sets down there, screws down in that, and then below that, in that barrel, will actually sets down inside this shaft right here. They're very, very small holes, and this is the actual torch tip cleaning that I was using to clean those holes out. That's about how big they're tiny. Clean all those out. Use lots of carburetor cleaner on the brass fittings, only on the brass, not while they're in the carburetor itself. Pull them all out and then use carburetor cleaner, because you don't want to get carburetor cleaner on this. It'll eat that thing up. But this, as I just touched, there's your float. So basically, the essentials of the float are this. You got to think this thing is upside down, it's mounted properly. It's going to be setting like this. When fuel starts coming in, this thing starts floating. That's why it's called a float. And when it gets to a certain point, it stops and it shuts everything off. How does it shut it off? Well, and there's a steel pin that sits in here, but I got it pulled out so I can show you real quick what's going on there. That comes out. That little tab there sets and pushes the float down. And I'll pull, the needle valve down. I'll pull the needle valve out now, put it down there, and show you. This is identical to what the Goldwing has. And as you see there, it's steel, and it's got a little rubber tip on it, almost like a pencil. But on this side, it's got a little spring. You always want to check that spring to make sure that spring's moving properly like it should. You can hear that one's fine. But that sets down in there, down that brass barrel right there. And basically, you got to think, when you feed fuel this thing, fuel passes beyond this. This is all that shuts it off. So when you go to put these things back together, this thing will set down inside of here. Pretty simple. And then you set your height from there, and you go off your manufacturer's height settings. But yeah, it's a pretty simple concept. And like I said, there's a steel rod that sets in there. But yeah, I pulled the carburetors apart. They were pretty dirty. And the thing was, it needed a good cleaning. It was going to come sometime or later. Well, it comes sooner than we thought it would. But the good thing is, he said the bike ran great before. I guarantee you, once it gets back, it's going to run even better, because that's how dirty those jets were, how dirty the bowls were, how disgusting it was down inside there. So these things have been set for about 2 hours. There's not a drop of fuel came out of it. I've checked the fuel level in them. They're fine, so we're good to go. Thing is, on this, if you don't have to put these carburetors in any kind of weird position where fuel's going to come out of them, if you do a bench test like this, pull your line off and go ahead and put the carburetors back in, because you already have fuel in there. Get everything put back together. Put your fuel line to it, turn your fuel on, whatever you got to do. And that way the engine, when it goes to start, it'll automatically pull fuel out, and you won't have to wear your starter out or run your battery down trying to get to pull fuel from the tank down into the carburetors. If you do a bench test like this, and you can put the carburetors in, pretty simple. There's no weird angles. This will help you out a lot. It's very simple. Just be real careful with that much fuel coming around you, because, fuel's pretty volatile. So anyway, hope that's it. I hope that's it with this thing. I hope this guy he doesn't put it over on site again. We find more issues that I wasn't dealing with before. So anyway, yeah. Thank you for watching the video, and hopefully I got some more coming up.